Today, I'm going to tell a story shocking of a man who had a near-death experience and received a revelation that could change everything you believe about God and religion. Before you start, comment here from which city you are watching this video. It is clear. Subscribe to the channel for more impactful stories like this. Now, get ready, because this experience will blow your mind. I, Thaddeus Quinton, lived a routine as fast-paced as the lights that illuminated the streets of Chicago at night. My day started very early, with the deafening sound of the alarm clock, and lasted until the late hours of the night, immersed in meetings, reports, and endless calls. My office, located in the financial heart of the city, was a haven of numbers and strategies, where every second counted and the pressure to achieve results was constant. As I walked through the city streets, I felt the pulse of the metropolis, the noise of cars, the hurried conversations of pedestrians, and the constant sense of urgency that seemed to permeate every corner. This frenetic energy was reflected in me, reinforcing the belief that success was measured only by profits and material achievements. I believed that you had to sacrifice rest, relationships, and even moments of reflection to stay on top. Even though I grew up in a home steeped in intense faith and religious values, my view of spirituality dissipated over time. In my childhood, the long nights filled with biblical stories, and my family's rigorous teachings left an indelible mark. However, as I matured, I began to see faith as something distant, incapable of explaining the complexity of business and modern life. In conversations with colleagues, we would often make ironic comments about the old creed and the idea of a punitive God, highlighting our preference for tangible and immediate results. I remember one afternoon when, after a decisive meeting, my colleague Jonathan Parker commented with a cynical smile, "Thaddeus, have you ever stopped to think that perhaps we should exchange these graphs and reports for something more? Spiritual? Who knows? Maybe a little faith will boost profits?" I laughed, responding with another joke. Faith, Jonathan? In the business world, the only belief that counts is reaching goals and closing contracts. These moments, although filled with sarcasm, hid a feeling of disconnection from the roots that could have once anchored me to something greater. Deep down, the incessant search for material success took me away from the sweet memories of a time when faith and family were the center of my existence. On Sunday mornings, when the city slowed down and faces seemed more relaxed, I still felt an inexplicable emptiness. The house, which previously echoed family laughter and songs, was now limited to quick and distant, almost mechanical meetings. My mother, Emily Carter, tried, with patience and love, to bring back the essence of what seemed to have been lost. On one of these mornings, she said to me, while preparing coffee with a tender look, "Thaddeus, can't you see that life is much more than numbers? There is beauty in the little things, in the faith, in the love we share." But immersed in the merciless pace of work, I barely listened. My answer was always wrapped in a curtain of justifications, emphasizing that success in the business world required sacrifices. This disconnect between what I was and what I aspired to be was silently becoming the prelude to a change I could never have predicted. The routine, marked by impassive meetings and a constant race against time, overshadowed any trace of sensitivity. It was as if I had become a prisoner of a vicious cycle, where each achievement took me further away from the human essence that once pulsed within me. That day started like so many others, but fate had a twist in store for me that I never imagined. I was walking along the busy sidewalks of downtown Chicago, immersed in my usual routine. The phone pressed to my ear, my thoughts running as fast as the traffic. I was barely aware of my surroundings. As he hurriedly walked to an important meeting, the city revealed itself in all its frenetic energy. The sounds of taxis, the whistles of traffic lights, and the murmurs of passers-by mixed together, composing an urban symphony. Amid this cacophony, my attention was completely focused on my interlocutor's voice, discussing the next steps of a project that promised significant results. Suddenly, A sharp metal sound mingled with the surroundings, interrupting the flow of thoughts. At that exact moment, a wooden board, unhooked and loose from some poorly planned work, began to swing dangerously. I barely had time to raise an arm, to feel the instinct to dodge. The inevitable happened. The board, heavy and merciless, fell on my head with brutal force. The repercussion was so violent that reality seemed to crack around me. In a second, the noise of the city and the surrounding voices turned into a distant echo. I felt a sharp pain, followed by an emptiness that swallowed my consciousness. In the midst of that chaos, I could still hear a muffled scream from a passerby, mixed with the sound of the hurried footsteps of those running to help. As it all happened, my mind wandered between flashes of confusion and the realization that something extraordinary was about to happen. I vividly remember an instant when an unidentified and distant voice seemed to whisper, "Hang in there, Thaddeus." But at the same time, everything became blurred. My body seemed to float, and time stretched into an endless spiral of shadows and flashing lights. Contact with the ground was lost, and the feeling of being thrown from one world to another was overwhelming. A few seconds passed, or was it minutes, as I experienced a mix of confusion and disorientation. A security officer, eyes wide, shouted, "Someone, call an ambulance! He's unconscious!" I could feel the weight of the gazes of passers-by and the urgency of each word that echoed at that moment. My legs, heavy and inert, did not respond to the call to rise. Everything around me was spinning, and the physical pain turned into a fog that took me into an almost dreamlike state. Yet even in that moment of uncertainty, a spark of awareness remained. Amid the collapse of the material world, one last image fixed itself in my mind. That of the board, inert, falling, as if fate wanted to show me that life is incredibly fragile and uncertain. The distant sound of sirens began to get closer, and the screams of rescuers mixed with the rapid beating of my heart, which was now fighting for its life. Every sound, every gentle touch of hands that tried to steady me, brought back fragments of the reality I knew so well. Yet, amidst the confusion, a feeling that something extraordinary was about to reveal itself persisted, like a whisper of fate preparing me for the journey that would change everything. At the exact moment that darkness threatened to engulf my consciousness, something extraordinary began to emerge within me. It was as if, when that fragile and burdened body ceased to exist, I had been welcomed by a totally different energy. I felt a gentle vibration, a murmur of colors and sensations that I never imagined could coexist. When I opened my eyes, which were no longer eyes, but a perception that transcended the physical, I saw a spectacle of light and shadow, where everything seemed to dissolve into an ethereal dance. As my mind calmed, the intense pain gave way to a feeling of unusual lightness. I floated, not in complete weightlessness, but as if the weight of earthly existence had been replaced by a heavenly softness. An intense blue light, serene and welcoming, bathed my entire being, filling every cell with a peace that seemed to defy the laws of the universe. In a moment of pure clarity, I thought, am I being taken to a new level of existence? In the midst of this new dimension, I realized that there was no longer the noise of cars, nor the confusion of the urban world. Everything was replaced by a silence that, far from being empty, overflowed with indescribable harmony. The sensation was as if I were immersed in an ocean of calm, where each wave carried with it the promise of redemption and knowledge. As I floated in this space between life and death, I began to observe myself, but from a totally different angle. I saw my body lying on the floor, unconscious, but for some reason, it gave me a feeling of protection and understanding. As if existence itself was teaching me that the limits of the physical and spiritual are just illusions. In this new realm, colors transformed into shapes and shapes into emotions. I saw patterns of light intertwining, creating images that recalled memories from a time far away and, at the same time, so close to my heart. In the midst of this spectacle, a soft and melodious voice whispered words that, although not completely understood, reverberated as promises of rebirth. Thaddeus, allow yourself to feel and learn, because every energy that inhabits this universe is part of you. I felt a comforting presence that could not be seen, but only felt. This energy was both intimidating and inviting, as if it wanted me to abandon any resistance, accepting the natural flow of existence. In an instant, all physical pain evaporated, replaced by a feeling of wholeness and oneness with everything around me. The transition, although sudden, was also incredibly smooth. I experienced an expanded consciousness, where thoughts mixed with feelings and, together, formed a new perception of time. Every second seemed to stretch into an eternity of learning and discovery. The world he knew dissolved into a sea of possibilities, and for the first time, the idea of limits disappeared completely. As I lost myself in this immensity, I noticed that the environment around me was made up of a myriad of vibrant colors, with shades of blue, violet, and silver intertwining in a visual symphony that spoke of hope and transformation. The feeling was of being in a place where time was not in a hurry, where every thought and every emotion was welcomed with compassion. I, Thaddeus, could never imagine that such a brutal accident could lead me to this new dimension, where the impossible became possible, and every particle of light carried the promise of a new chance for life. This journey of transition was not just an escape from pain, but an encounter with the primordial essence of existence, where the truth of the universe revealed itself in each pulse of light. As I continued to float in that sea of light and colors, a new scenario began to take shape before me, revealing a passage that seemed to invite a journey of reunion. A luminous staircase, made up of steps that radiated a gentle energy, appeared out of nowhere, leading me towards a white stone bridge that stretched across an abyss of peace and mystery. Every step I took on this staircase seemed to be a return to my roots, a reminder of the stories that once echoed in my childhood. Upon reaching the bridge, the feeling of déjà vu invaded my being. I felt like I was walking through a long, dormant memory. The stones beneath my feet glowed with a radiance that echoed an ancient truth, and as I walked forward, an aura of warmth and familiarity began to envelop every part of me. At the end of the bridge, the vision revealed itself. Figures that seemed to have come straight from my deepest thoughts. The first figure to materialize was my father. He was dressed simply, but his presence exuded a calm authority and a love that transcended time. His eyes, full of understanding and slight sadness, met mine, and, in a tone of voice that mixed firmness and tenderness, he said, "Thaddeus, my son, there is so much we need to talk about. Your journey has just begun, and there is still a lot you need to learn." Soon after, my grandmother appeared. She, with her welcoming smile and hands always ready to offer affection, approached slowly, as if each movement were a silent hug. "My dear," she murmured, almost as if the memory itself turned to affection. "You always had a special glow, even when you couldn't see. We are here to remind you of where you came from and the love that sustains you." In the midst of these reunions, the atmosphere was filled with voices and laughter that seemed to echo the celebrations of times past. I could hear soft laughter, like those that echoed at family parties, and the sound of old songs, which, even far away, carried the essence of warmth and togetherness. I felt as if, for a brief moment, time had condensed into a celebration of life, where each soul present surrounded me with a sense of belonging. While talking to them, dialogues emerged, filled with wisdom and a sweetness that only a reunion with those who have passed away can provide. My father spoke about the challenges I faced and the paths that led me there, reminding me of the lessons of humility and the true value of love. My grandmother, with her soft voice, recalled stories from the past, where every gesture and every word contributed to building the person I was. Every word we exchanged seemed to dissolve the barriers between life and death. The energy that emanated from them was as real as the sun that warms the skin, and as they enveloped me, I felt that time was not passing. It was just being transformed. Those moments taught me that physical separation was just an illusion, and that the true bond between hearts is never broken. As the bridge began to dissolve into sparkling sparkles, the feeling of protection and unconditional love remained. Their message was clear. Even if life takes them on different paths, the love we share is eternal and unites us, regardless of the dimension we are in. As I moved away from the aura of reunion with my loved ones, a new energy was present on the horizon of my consciousness. A serene, powerful force, unlike anything I had ever experienced, began to envelop me. The feeling was of slowly walking towards a universal embrace, where the concept of time and space became irrelevant. As I floated in this transitional space, a resplendent light emerged, unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was not an aggressive light, but rather a welcoming presence that seemed to radiate warmth and peace. Little by little, I realized that this light was not just a visual phenomenon, but the manifestation of the divine essence itself. In the midst of this splendor, I felt my heart open, almost involuntarily, to accept what was about to reveal itself. The light began to focus on one point, transforming into an entity that, even without a defined shape, exuded immeasurable love. In this presence, there was no judgment, just full acceptance. In a moment of profound silence, I heard a voice, which did not belong to a physical body, but which penetrated my soul. Thaddeus, free yourself from the ties that bind you to the past and the mistaken idea of punishment. I am the love that permeates all creation. The words echoed like a sacred melody, touching every corner of my being. I felt every cell vibrate in synchrony with that statement, as if every fiber of my body was finally understanding that there was no condemnation, but rather an invitation to evolution and true freedom. In the midst of this transcendental experience, I began to visualize symbols and images that seemed to tell a story of redemption and renewal. Every detail, the soft glow of light, the contours that crumbled as if they were made of pure energy, spoke of a universe where compassion reigned supreme. I could see that all the beliefs that had been imposed on me, the idea of a punitive and distant God, were being rewritten before my eyes, replaced by a new narrative where the divine essence was synonymous with love and acceptance. In an instant, I felt a presence closer, as if the light itself condensed into the form of a serene angel who approached me and whispered, "Thaddeus, allow love to be your guide. There is no condemnation, only learning. The journey is made of choices, and each choice brings you closer to the true essence of life." The words resonated with me with the depth of a secret kept for millennia. As this figure moved silently around me, the feeling of comfort intensified, as if all previous pain and suffering dissolved in the face of a greater truth. The pressure I always felt on my shoulders, resulting from the judgments and criticisms of earthly life, seemed to disappear, replaced by an inexplicable lightness and the certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. For a moment, I was immersed in that communion with divinity, where every emotion was amplified and at the same time transformed into pure energy of love. I saw myself reflected in the light, and every fraction of me was filled with the certainty that, although the world was imperfect, the divine lived in every detail, in every breath, and in every beat of my heart. It was at that moment that I understood that true power does not reside in punishment or judgment, but in the ability to love unconditionally and transform suffering into wisdom. I, Thaddeus, could feel irrevocably that that light was proof that love was the primordial force of the universe. a force capable of healing, redeeming, and guiding humanity towards a fuller and more conscious future. Amid that sea of light, and the feeling of peace that invaded every cell of my being, a new figure began to emerge, bringing with it an aura of simplicity and compassion that contrasted with all the grandeur of the divine presence that I had already experienced. It was as if, from the entire immensity of that universe, an energy condensed and took the form of a man, with a serene countenance and deep gaze, who seemed to know every detail of my story. I, Thaddeus, immediately felt that this was not a mere illusion, but an encounter that would transcend the limits of human understanding. As I approached this figure, a feeling of warmth and welcome came over me. Her steps were slow and measured, and despite the absence of luxurious clothing or flashy adornments, there was a natural elegance in her simplicity. His eyes, deep and gentle, stared into mine as if they were revealing the secrets of my soul. In a calm and comforting tone, he began the dialogue. "Thaddeus, you carried many doubts and wounds in your heart. Today, I am here to show you that the love you have been taught over the centuries has been distorted, and that the true essence of my message is compassion and unity." I, still absorbing the impact of that encounter, replied in a trembling voice, "How can I understand something so vast? My life, marked by skepticism and the incessant pursuit of success, never prepared me to feel such peace." He smiled, a smile that seemed to light up the environment around us even more, and continued. "Often, wisdom is hidden in the details of simplicity. Religions created dogmas and rules that, instead of bringing people closer together, separated men from the true essence of love. The kingdom of heaven, Thaddeus, is not in distant realms, but within every heart willing to embrace forgiveness and kindness." As these words resonated, I could feel an internal transformation. The intensity of the experience transcended mere intellectual understanding. It was a revelation that touched the depths of my being. In the midst of this silent, intimate dialogue, he led me through images and metaphors that represented the true message of life. In a vivid vision, I saw a serene field where people of all backgrounds gathered, sharing stories, pains, and joys. Each face was marked by scars that, instead of hiding, told stories of overcoming and resilience. Jesus pointed to each person tenderly and said, "See, Thaddeus, every soul here is a reflection of divine love. There is no place for judgment, only for the understanding that we are all part of the same great mystery." I felt enveloped by this display of empathy, as if all the barriers I had erected over the years were gently dissolving. The presence of Jesus not only confronted my outdated beliefs, but also showed me an alternative path, where the power to transform pain into love was present in every gesture and word. True faith, Thaddeus, is not based on fears or punishments, but on the ability to forgive, to love without conditions, and to surrender to the beauty of existence, he said, as his eyes shone with a light that transcended time. Every word, every silence between our dialogues, reinforced the idea that the divine was present at all times, including moments of fragility and pain. At that meeting, I understood that my journey was not just about escaping the pain, but about transforming my life through the unconditional love he represented. When Jesus finished speaking to me about the true essence of faith, I felt as if a current of energy coursed through my being, preparing me for the next chapter of this journey. Suddenly, a unique and powerful sensation began to emerge. I was touched on my forehead by what seemed to be the energy of Jesus himself, and in an instant, my mind was flooded with visions of the future. The images appeared like scenes from a film unfolding before my eyes, but with a clarity and depth that surpassed any memory. The first vision showed me a scene of loneliness. My mother, Emily Carter, was alone in a small living room, time leaving deep marks on her face. She found herself in the midst of a silence filled with sadness, where every corner of the house seemed to echo the absence of human warmth. "Mom," I feel your pain so much, I thought, as I watched the image with a heavy heart. Soon after, a new scene unfolded. My son, Miguel Quinton, appeared in a park, playing with other children, but there was something disturbing in his eyes. He walked through laughter and running, but every now and then his eyes were lost in emptiness, as if he felt the absence of an essential presence in his life. The vision made me question, would he be able to grow without the support I always wanted to offer? Miguel, you deserve all the joy the world can offer, I whispered to myself, feeling like these images were a warning. As the scenes changed, the setting transformed into something alternative, a vision of what a different future could be. From this new perspective, I found myself present at crucial moments, supporting my mother, caring for Miguel, and involving everyone around me with gestures of compassion and love. One striking scene showed me hugging my mother tenderly, and, in another, walking hand in hand with Miguel in a golden afternoon, where the sun seemed to paint the sky with tones of hope. I can change the future. I can bring light back to those I love, I thought, feeling a renewing force emerge from the depths of my soul. These visions were intense and conflicting. On the one hand, they revealed a painful future, where the absence of my presence caused an imbalance, affecting not only me, but also everyone who connected with me. On the other hand, they showed an alternative path, a future where my choice to return to Earth would make a difference, transforming pain into learning and sadness into hope. During this whirlwind of images, I heard again the serene voice of Jesus who said, "Thaddeus, these visions are not an immutable destiny, but rather an invitation to change. You have the opportunity to rewrite your future, to transform pain into light and absence into presence." This message resonated deeply with me. Every detail of the vision, Emily's silent expression, the moments of doubt in Miguel's eyes, and the image of a future where I was present to care and transform coalesced into a powerful reminder. My choices, no matter how insignificant they seemed, carried the weight of defining destinies. I cannot allow sadness to settle in the lives of those I love. I must act, transform, and show that love can heal all wounds, I declared in thought, with the conviction that change was within my reach. These visions of the future were not merely distant scenarios. They were invitations to reflection and commitment. Each image reminded me of the responsibility I carried and the power I had to positively influence the lives of those around me. So, at that moment, I understood that time was an ally, and that the path to redemption involved courageous choices and recognition of the inestimable value of love and presence in the lives of those who matter most. When the vision of the future dissipated, I was left with a silence filled with decisions. There, on that threshold between the spiritual dimension and earthly reality, I felt the presence of Jesus approaching once again. His calm voice, yet full of authority, echoed in my mind. Thaddeus, the path you choose is yours. You can remain in this realm of light and peace or return to Earth to fulfill the mission that remains for you. For a few moments, time seemed to stretch indefinitely. I, who had always prided myself on my determination and pragmatism, now found myself faced with a choice that transcended logic. Deep within me, doubt was mixed with renewed hope, as the possibility of transforming the destiny of those I loved presented itself as an irresistible call. I remember closing my eyes and feeling the weight of each decision, as if each beat of my heart marked the beat of a new era in my existence. In the midst of this whirlwind of feelings, Jesus' voice continued, "Fear not, Thaddeus. Returning to Earth is not a punishment, but an opportunity to rewrite your history. Your mother, your son, and so many others are waiting for you. There is a greater purpose to this journey." As I processed these words, a memory from my past came flooding back. The gentle words of my mother, Emily Carter, who always told me that love and presence were the true treasures in life. Immediately, the image of her gentle smile invaded my mind, along with the vision of Miguel, who, even in the midst of difficulties, always demonstrated silent strength. In a moment of deep introspection, I began to dialogue with the presence that accompanied me. In a low voice, almost like a whisper to the universe, I declared, "If I choose to return, let it be to return the love I received and to correct the mistakes of a life dominated by materialism. I can no longer ignore the signs that show me that my mission is greater than simply achieving financial success." The decision, however, was not without its risks and challenges. He knew that returning to Earth would mean facing the accumulated pain and uncertainties of the world he had left behind. There would be criticism, doubt, and even the weight of guilt for having separated myself from the people who truly mattered. But at that moment, the choice seemed clear. It was necessary to return to transform absence into presence, to heal the wounds that time had aggravated. Little by little, the energy that surrounded me began to transform. The blue glow that guided me intensified, but now it also carried the faint melody of a farewell, not a definitive goodbye, but a reminder that balancing the worlds requires conscious choices. I then felt an invisible hand, soft and firm, that led me back to the essence of who I was, reconnecting every scattered fragment of my being. I knew then that returning meant embracing both the beauty and challenges of human existence. The final message that echoed in my soul was one of courage and commitment. Jesus, with his look full of compassion, reinforced, "Every step on earth will be a new beginning, Thaddeus. Your journey will not be without difficulties, but know that love will always be by your side." At that exact moment, the choice became palpable. I realized that the opportunity to transform the future, to heal my mother, support my son, and influence the lives of so many other people was a calling that could not be ignored. It was then that, with a heart full of hope and determination, I decided to return to Earth. As the choice to return settled in my heart, I felt a sudden change in the atmosphere. The ethereal environment began to dissolve, as if reality itself was preparing to reintegrate me into the physical world. The sensation was of a gentle descent, like that of a feather being carried by the wind, but with the certainty that each moment would be charged with the intensity of a new life. I remember closing my eyes, feeling a tingling that spread throughout my body, as if every cell was waking up from a deep sleep. In the midst of this descent, the voice of Jesus still echoed in my mind, saying, "Thaddeus, every step you take now is a rebirth. Get ready, because returning to your body is the beginning of a new chapter." The tingling turned to a gentle pulse, and I began to notice my surroundings. I was slowly being pulled back into a space where the sounds, colors, and smells were familiar. Yet for a brief moment, everything felt distant and dreamlike. In a sort of trance, I opened my eyes to find the hospital room enveloped in an aura of calm. The cold white lights in the environment contrasted with the intensity of the experiences he had lived, but, at the same time, brought a feeling of safety and a return to normality. Upon noticing the change, a doctor approached with a look of relief on his face, while the nurse murmured reassuring words. "Thaddeus, you're back." His heart started beating again. "It seems like a real miracle." These words mixed incredulity and relief, while I, still with my mind wandering between two worlds, tried to understand the meaning of that return. Each breath seemed to carry the essence of what he had experienced in the spiritual dimension, and for a brief moment, the sound of the heart monitors pulsed like a melody announcing rebirth. As the doctors talked about recovery and tests, my attention turned to the palpable feel of the floor beneath my feet, the smell of disinfectant, and the soft light filtering through the hospital windows. All of this reminded me that, even after touching the corners of existence beyond life, I was still part of that world, and that my newly discovered mission was calling me back. Amidst the confusion of sounds and movements, The voice of my mother, Emily Carter, reached my ears. She was there, along with other family members, with a look full of concern and love. Between suppressed tears, she whispered, "My son, you have returned to us. I always knew there was something special about you." That simple reunion brought me a wave of emotions, joy, relief, and a deep responsibility. The experience I had experienced, although transcendent, now manifested itself in a new sense. My body, filled with scars and physical marks, was a living reminder that every second was precious and that life should be lived with love and purpose. As the doctors continued their analyses and the noise of the equipment mixed with the murmurs of concern and gratitude from those present, I felt that a profound transformation had taken place. Returning to my body was not just the end of a spiritual journey, but the beginning of a renewed commitment to life, a silent promise to honor what I had learned, to care for my mother, to be there for my son Miguel, and to share the message of unconditional love that now pulsed through me. After returning to my body and feeling the pulse of each cell as if it were a symphony of rebirth, my existence would never be the same. What was once a life governed by the rush of business, the incessant search for results and emotional distance, was now transformed into a new reality where every moment became sacred and full of meaning. In the days following the miracle, the hospital became a scene of rediscovery. The recovery, surprisingly quick and inexplicable to the doctors, was for me living proof that the transcendental experience had not been a mere daydream. During Sadi, the long hours of rest, I began to hear, almost like a constant whisper, the soft voice of the divine presence and of Jesus, guiding me to rethink my priorities. One afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered through the bedroom window, my mother, Emily Carter, walked in slowly, with a look of mixed relief and apprehension. Sitting down next to me, she held my hand firmly and said, "Thaddeus, since you came back, I feel like something has changed in you. Your look, your voice. It seems like you finally discovered what really matters." These words touched my heart, awakening memories of a forgotten time when family conversations were full of faith and love. Aware of the urgency to change, I began to explore practices that had long been dormant within me. Meditation, prayer, and even reading spiritual texts began to occupy the space that was previously reserved only for spreadsheets and meetings. Each new habit was a step towards reconnecting with my essence. At work, the effect of the transformation was felt palpably. My colleague Jonathan Parker, always so immersed in materialism, noticed the change and, in a meeting, commented with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "Thaddeus, you have been different. It seems like you've suddenly found a purpose beyond numbers. What happened?" With a serene smile, I replied, "Jonathan, life has taught me that success without love is empty. I discovered that true results are not measured in financial statements, but in the ability to transform lives." This new vision pushed me to embrace social projects and dedicate more time to voluntary actions. Working in hospitals, helping terminally ill patients, and developing initiatives that integrated the community became the new goals. Each project was an opportunity to spread the love and compassion I now carried. Meetings with friends and family have taken on a new dimension. Over simple dinners and long conversations, I spoke openly about the experience that almost took my life and, on the contrary, gave me back a new purpose. The impact was so great that at a family meeting, my son Miguel, with his curious eyes, asked, "Daddy, you look so different. It's as if I've discovered a secret of life." And I, with the sincerity of a man who has faced his own mortality, replied, "Miguel, the secret is simple. Love, compassion, and faith in something greater than ourselves." I realized that true happiness comes from within, and that every act of kindness can transform the world. This internal transformation was reflected in every aspect of my life. I learned to value the small moments, the spontaneous laughter of a friend, the tight hug of a family member, the welcoming silence of a starry night in Chicago. The near-death experience taught me that although material success is ephemeral, love and connection with others are eternal. Today, I continue walking with this new perspective, knowing that despite the challenges, I will never be alone. The legacy of this journey is the certainty that life can be transformed at every moment if we allow the light of love to penetrate our hearts.